my field experience, I got the opportunity to observe Mr. Jory, who is a very enthusiastic and impressive teacher. He's has a way of connecting with the students that is really enlightening, and he has these teaching methods that I know will create a lasting impact for these students and will make their future math courses much easier. One thing that I did like was how he used those tricks, like, for example, the Dillon Middle School check burr, which is a method that they use to make sure that they're doing things in the correct order when dividing with decimals. However, I didn't like the row seating just because some students weren't as engaged, so I feel like you might need to adapt it to the classroom, or if you're noticing that those students aren't engaged, it's probably because they're not understanding the material as much, so maybe interact with them a little bit more than what I saw. I did enjoy how he would go over problems that students necessarily didn't ask, but he knew they would most likely be having trouble with anyways, because it ended up being true, and he did a great job of exemplifying how to break down those problems and how to solve them. I also enjoyed his references to all areas of math, to all rules of math, just for example, the lining up the decimals when using addition, and so forth. I also enjoyed how he made connections to past lessons, just as he used finding a coordinate like the x and y coordinates that they learned in the previous lesson, since now they're learning function notation, which was quite intimidating when he first put it on the board, but he changed it to a y. You're just trying to find the y value, and that simple change made a definite impact on them because they were able to solve problems with more ease with that. Solving inequalities and equations, he focused on opposites, so he was tending those students' prior knowledge. I think that he sought that out in each classroom, and that's something I hope to do, to realize what their strengths are and how I connect different topics for them, so it's not as something as so confusing. I did enjoy his inclusion of humor in the classroom because his students definitely were engaged. I didn't necessarily like showing the incorrect way of doing something at the college level. I definitely condone that. Like, for example, I would understand certain rules, or I would be more keen to seeing something that would be wrong and being more outspoken about it. However, his class was not able to catch the rule, though those students might be having those misconceptions, and I just don't think that they're seeing those in detail and more writing them down. So I didn't necessarily like showing the incorrect way of doing something, but I get where he was coming from. I liked his use of whole numbers, so those word problems that have really ugly numbers that are super intimidating for kids, especially because all of his classes seem to struggle with word problems. He used the numbers like 8 and 2 just to decipher what the problem is asking, so it doesn't become as intimidating. With his quizzes, I would have done it differently in some periods. The second period I watched was definitely laid out well. He went around to students who seemed like they were struggling a little bit and led them into the right direction. I really enjoyed that. I liked the space and having a clear desk. However, the period before, when they were taking a test, their desks were cluttered. Everyone was still moving around. He wasn't really moving around to see if any students have help. So in that case, I would have rathered have the desk clean, and if they did have a problem, I would be able to come around and ask with that space between the tables. The most insightful thing that I watched overall was how he fixed a misconception on the spot when using inequalities. Some girl thought that putting 100 at the end would signify that number being larger than 7. And he said that is incorrect. That number represents the infinite amount, and stressed that these numbers have meaning, these equations have meaning, and it's important to understand those before we do anything else. But he showed that what that would look like in reality, and what these problems are asking is to show that infinite amount going forward. So I definitely got a lot out of this. Thank you.